Making Big Shifts, presented by Marketing Reboot, with your host, Josh Anderson.
Welcome, everyone, to Making Big Shifts by Marketing Reboot. I'm your host, Josh Anderson. We spotlight real entrepreneurs making real changes and the real results that followed. We'll break down the playbooks, the pitfalls, the proof, showing you how to scale without the chaos. So let's get into it. Today, I'm joined by Vadim Peskov. He is the CEO of Diffco and an advisor at Alchemist Accelerator and numerous other startups. He's an expert and speaker who combines years of experience in AI-enhanced applications, cybersecurity, and product development and design. As an advisor, Vadim helps startups grow faster and find ways to scale. Side note, he's also very passionate about aviation. So welcome to the podcast, Vadim.
Thanks for inviting. Pleasure to be here.
Very good. Very good. So, making big shifts is all about really, like I just said, coming to that point in the road where you're like, oh crap, or shit, I got to make a change. What has that been for you, and how did you get to that point, and why?
I mean, the life is always about making big changes if you want to move forward. And at some point, it's just not viewed as a big change.
Yeah.
I think you start experimenting and changing things and basically understanding where you're moving by the end of the day. This is the core part, what is important in this case, because if you see the goal, and sure, goal will be changing day to day and month to month, year to year. However, clear understanding where are you going, I think is changing the way that anything else is not so challenging anymore. Because you have the goal, you just move into this direction, and sometimes it seems impossible in the beginning, and you just cut it into 10 small pieces, sometimes 100, and move along.
Yeah. So as helping numerous startups through growth stage and things of that nature, what are some big shifts you've seen in real life where people maybe they started out with the idea of this company, but then as they get into it, they get customer feedback, they get marketing feedback, right, on their positioning and their messaging. What kind of shifts have you seen? Is there any real life examples you can give?
Yeah, absolutely. I had many startups that experienced different type of pivots, and we can define pivots differently, obviously. So just for this conversation, I would be clear in terms of the pivots. From my perspective, is where it's not just a feature set, it's a market segment change or specific type of product change.
Yeah.
So for example, when you dive from system of record to system of decisions, etc. So this is kind of a step-by-step process, I think. I think what I've seen in many startups, they have a wonderful idea, they believe in this idea, and they think this will be next unicorn, next Google, wherever. The truth is, this idea is maybe acceptable to whatever number of users. If it's B2B, maybe it's hundreds companies, etc. They do not understand why this would not be a billion-dollar company. And in many cases, and if you will see any actually successful companies, or most of them, when they started, they had really small, really large idea that end up being really pushed away into maybe smaller pieces, smaller segments, and really focusing on what is actually important. And sometimes, and basically 99% of the cases, the product will shift, change, and adapt. And it can have the same logo and same idea, but why the people buying this product would be different. And I think that the core principle here is to understand what is actually in need from the consumer. By the end of the day, what they want to pay for. If you have this ultimate credit card test, can you give me a credit card for this idea? This would be the best visualization that it's actually worth it. And again, from the right audience and in the right quantity.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to that, it's all about providing value or perceived value, right? To get to get the credit card checkout, whatever it would be. What do you find is the best way for people to nail down that? Like you said, most people start with these really big ideas. Is the best to niche down and provide as much value to your true, or maybe try to find your true customer core and then expand for that? Or how do you define that value and pivot from there?
I think the core thing is generally talk with your users and experiment. Again, obviously depends on I'm talking mostly about B2B kind of scenarios.
Yeah.
Through my experience, I'm mostly focusing on B2B SaaS enterprise software, mostly AI right now. However, even in B2C is you talk with your customers one way or another. You ask them questions, you understand what they need, and you have the clear understanding who is your audience and why they buying a product. What the problem you by end of the day solving for them.
Yeah.
If this is a status game, if this is some kind of a time saver or money saver or money earner, what the problem you're solving for them. And if it's multiple buyers involved, you understand each of them and you follow the path specifically to the idea like, hey, what is actually there? Why you need to actually have this product? Why you cannot just use existing solution for this? What is different? Because like I can use Excel to have a CRM there. And basically it would be enough for a lot of use cases, by the way. You don't need to buy a Salesforce to a customer database. But why are you buying Salesforce? What type of problem Salesforce is actually solving for you? And is it just like a communication? No, it is much deeper than this. And it's also a trust to the brand right now. Or like if you're trying to overcompete, for example, in this segment, you would need to have something different.
Yeah.
You cannot just have the idea, hey, we'll have all the functionality of Salesforce tomorrow. No, you will not. And people will not buy you even if you have the same amount of functionality. It's always a question on a deep level to really understand for founders and for folks that really managing this, why the customer is buying and what they actually need. Not why they saying they need this. Because it could be different in many cases.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that kind of goes then. Now, my head is, I've been working with a few clients on minimally viable products, right? So you have this idea. You don't even have the product yet, but you really truly believe that you can deliver value in some instances, right? What do you see as a good way to test the idea behind that MVP out with actually putting a lot of resources and capital into developing it? Like, there's anonymous surveys, right? There are landing page pre-sign up beta testing, things of that nature. Is there any tactics you've used or seen used in the past?
Yeah, I mean, this would definitely depends on a product, just to be clear. Like if we're talking about a business use case, it would be one story. If we're talking about mostly enterprise use cases, it could be different, and B2C is also different. But for the sake of the example, let's talk about like a mid-market B2B products, enterprise related. So in this case, you mostly will be focusing on different type of engagements that would be allowing you to test the product before it becomes a product, basically. Ideally, you could create some kind of prototype one way or another. It could be a design prototype, could be done something with lovable build, etc., like with AI generated stuff. And you go to the customer and show them the product, ask what they think. Ideally, try to sell this into the same functionality and iterate on this. Because in many cases, what I see for many startups, they come and like, hey, we have a wonderful idea. We believe that this will work. We need $1 million to build it. It's like, great. No, you don't. Please build this with $5,000, test it, and do the work.
Iterate, yeah.
It's certain exception to the rule, obviously. Some cases, you actually need to build a product. In some cases, it's almost impossible to go to this market without large-scale product. Sure, those cases exist. The point is, it's like few percent of this, maybe 5% of this. So in many cases, you can build a product, you can show this to your customer or the partner, wherever the channel approach you will use, and have this conversation why this is actually sellable. What is the point for this product to be available for me? Like why I would pay and why I vouch for this product. So test this with minimal budget. And again, I think this constraint with the budget is really important because believe me, I saw many examples of some startups having too much free cash flow from other things, and they try to build a large scale product and test it this way. Sure, this could work, but if you never build the product in this area and if you never understand this type of customer, it is in many cases just basically a gambling.
Yeah.
And you maybe will be much more likely going to Vegas to play in a poker table versus trying to build this in this way.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that's great advice. Well, just kind of going back to like the theme of the making big shifts here. I know during some, you have your hands in several businesses, obviously as a helping startups, then your own businesses, of course. Whenever you are making these implementations, these changes, right? Say whether it's at Diffco or one of your other incubator startups, how do you combat change resistance? There's going to be some change resistance, especially if it's a relatively big change. Have you seen that, and how have you combated that?
You're talking about clients or startup itself?
The startup itself, whether it's your VP of sales or your co-founder or, somebody is, if you're trying to make a big change, it's going to fundamentally change. I said change a lot there, but it's going to change the way business is done. Maybe it's how you're marketing your product. You probably will have some resistance within the employees or your partners. How have you combated selling your idea of these changes to them?
It depends on the style of the company and definitely would be depending on your way of structuring this. And if you
Yeah.
have the and say, because sometimes as a founder, you just make a decision that no one likes and you take the risk basically and take the blame that it is a stupid idea, but I believe in this and etc. This could work in some cases. Obviously, again, if you just VP, it may not be the case and maybe it will be slightly more challenging for you. So I think in many cases, it is, again, business is all about risk. Again, we try to do this as a calculated risk, but by end of the day, it is proving to yourself why it's worse. It is a whole ideology about like writing the long thesis, how to do this, etc. Like working backwards, for example, that Amazon implementing. I think it is a great tool for large corporations, and it's absolutely terrible for startups. Because in the case of startup, you have the idea, you talk with X number of people, wherever team you have there that involved in this decision, and you ask, hey, can we test this? Or can we go to the customer and have the conversation about this? Does it make sense? Do you think it will work? Do you think what we're suggesting is actually interesting to the customer? Let me do the prototype. And in many cases, what I see, even like in enterprises, people will do some kind of prototype and they will show this prototype to the client and say, hey, here's how this will work, etc. It's like right now done through whatever tool. It's please do not put like a really sensitive data there, but this is what it will do. And this is how the approach will work. If you have a different type of challenge, if it's not like a functionality or product decision, I think the core thing is, I always kind of have a mantra about like, hey, hire slow and fire fast. I think this is the core logic that you as a team leader or whatever should have. Because if you have a strong belief, and if it's not just blind belief, that you have you're ready to take the risk basically, and you have the clear understanding why this will work, not just like, hey, it may work because I believe that going left is the right decision. You just need to have the data to understand this. Sometimes, again, you need to go blind, sure. Especially like with a lot of functionality right now, like that near AI related, you will go blind. And predicting what will happen with AI, like in a year from now, man, like, come on, like no one can predict what will happen next week.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So it's just second guessing this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How have you used that? You know, you kind of gave some anecdotes there, but have you used your mantra? Like, can you give an example of that personal mantra that you continually use, and have you related that to an actual business decision or how you run your businesses?
I think like in my case, I don't think I use it enough in many cases, to be honest. I think I'm trying to push myself to make faster decisions.
Yeah.
And again, when you see yourself like what you do on a daily basis and like how you implement things, and you can do the side look, is checking like, hey, what is going on there? I think it's a good exercise of checking what is actually going on and what the logic behind this. I think this is the best approach, to be honest. And like my main mantra is basically finding the right to like continue experimenting, because in many cases, again, your team is your core asset, sure. However, you as a founder, you need to be involved and you need to understand where the thing is moving. I do not believe that in many cases, in the case of like founder-led companies, you can switch it really easily to the condition like, hey, team will run this. It's like, great. Sure, you should have a team that understand where they're going and implementing your vision. However, it is still your job to ensure that they're moving in the right direction.
Totally. Yeah.
And again, sometimes you need to steer them slightly different. And it will be a challenge for sure. However, if you don't do this properly, you're basically blind in terms of where your company is going. And I don't think you should go easy on anyone on your business. I think they need to do the work, and it's not about work-life balance. It doesn't exist. Don't even like come to interviews if you think this things is actually close to real. Like, especially for like founders or like VP positions or anything like this. And this is illusion. Like, will not tell anyone that startups is easy. Will not tell that it's something that you can do as a side hustle. No. This is like engagement. You commit, and you commit the life for the time that you work on this. And sometimes it's a couple of years, sometimes it's 10 years, sometimes it's 20. But if you're not ready for commitment, it's plenty of jobs that don't require commitment.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? I kind of go back to what you said at the very beginning of that answer was about making decisions faster. And that was actually one of my 2025 goals, was the exact same thing: make decisions faster, trust my intuition, back it with data when needed, right? Just because that's where I see a lot of like my clients that just sit on a decision for weeks, months. And at the end of the day, they already, at the beginning of that decision, they already knew what they were going to do. They just waited 6 months, but for no reasons. I think that's just classic great advice right there. Do you see that issue with a lot of the companies you deal with as well? They just overanalysis paralysis almost?
Oh yeah. Like I can give you one interesting example. And it was a lot of studies on this topic, just to be clear. Again, I will not name specific study. There were the people that win is people that just do things faster and do more things per period of time. I mean, they experiment, they try different things, they experiment on different approaches, they fail, sure. But the point is, sometimes it's just a number game. And businesses, it is mostly a number game. And I can give like a maybe slightly simple approach, the same as dating. It is a number game. If you locate it in a specific place where you have two potential people to talk to, you basically already failed. So put yourself in a position where you're in the right place. And yes, luck will play the game for sure. But if you locate it in Antarctica, don't think that you will be able to meet a lot of people that will be helping you building a whatever business in tech. Could be, but the probability is just too low.
Yeah.
So I think putting yourself in the right position is one thing, but also experimenting and testing new things is the most critical portion for the success. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to like make a right decision, one right decision in a year and think that this will bring you the result that you're looking for. Sometimes those cases exist again, but in business, the people that win, if you again go through the self-made billionaires, for example, all of them execute really fast. And if you really dive into a lot of those folks, you will see that they typically not the most smartest people in a room. They're smart, sure.
Yeah.
However,
very savvy.
It's not about like having 200 plus IQs. No. It is sometimes the dumb people that win just because they experiment more. And yeah, it's again, depending which field you're in, etc., those things exist. However, in many cases, it just like getting more things done in the same period of time, testing new features, talking to more clients, testing different markets, or by end of the day, basically pushing the same ideas that you have just to more people in the same time and be really active. You cannot just like take a day off and think that you will get the result there. Yes, you need time to think. Absolutely. I'm not saying that you need to work 24/7. No, I'm saying that you should experiment faster and you should not think for longer hours for something that could be easily done in minutes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, right? That's why it was a goal of mine this year, because I had that issue historically, right? So this is great. This is great advice. So as we kind of move forward here, we'll shift a little bit. So what are you working on currently and what are you excited about? What are you working on that you are excited about? There we go.
Yeah. So it's I'm saying that I think I'm really excited about the shifts that currently happen in the AI. I think people underestimate still how fast things is going.
Yeah.
And again, I've been through multiple tech revolutions in the past. And I didn't see everything, obviously. Again, I've been too young to see semiconductor runs, etc., and a bunch of things in the 90s. But in the same time, what I see right now is the pace that how things happening is really dramatic. And the fact that you can give more compute to, let's say, OpenAI and Anthropic, and they can double their revenue in matter of months, this is absolutely insane. You never had this logic in the past. Like, it's absolutely impossible to imagine that you can get some kind of resource added to the company that will double their revenue in a month. When we're talking about this type of scale, like tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars. So I think it's different logic. I think like what we're working on is putting a lot of ideas that we currently have for the startups to the mindset of how those technological waves will be different like in a year from now. And yeah, it's a gambling for sure. And we see that many AI tech right now is having some different error rates, having some issues with different type of agentic approaches. And yeah, so it's a future for sure. However, like we need to understand that right now we have multiple challenges. So right now, many products that we built today is actually dedicated to idea that right now we launching this as a simple functionality, but we grow into the idea that like in 6 months, sometimes again, matter of months, sometimes it's like a year projection depending on an industry and type. However, the core point is to push this really, really in a much more dynamic approach where you really pushing the technological wave forward.
Okay.
You cannot build right now with the idea that you will not have agentic approach. You cannot build the product in an old way and believe that this is good enough. It's not. Those things will change, and we'll have a lot of different shift changes in the market, and definitely will be pushing a bunch of additional logics on top of this. However, to make it really work, you would need to really imply and understand all of those logics. This is why my core point is right now, AI is a tool that could be used by true professionals to build things faster. It's not a tool for juniors to become true professionals, at least not now. In the future, sure, maybe, but like today, it is a tool that can accelerate you. And I think this is what I'm really excited about in a business use case. And I don't think like we will have like a robots running around next couple of years. I really hope we will. I think we will have agents helping us with many, many things on day-to-day life and really putting things forward there. And by the way, many of those things right now is limited by compute, not the technology, which is like really fascinating to me because it's a question of having enough GPUs by the end of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that where you now? Do you have a specific? So many questions to answer that. My first one would be, do you guys have like a specific framework you use for looking out a year from now? Like, are you looking at key indicators, or it might be a proprietary framework you use, but do you have a systematic way of doing that?
I mean, frameworks, like from my perspective, again, I'm kind of like not a guy that will be focusing specifically on the frameworks. I'm a person that want to feel the shift and understand how this actually working by myself. I mean, for example, right now, my strong belief that we'll have a lot of changes in the market because of different AI characters that exist. And really understanding how those characters work, what their limitations are, I think is really fascinating and allowing people to really put this forward. Because I see how this progressing. And again, yeah, I can use whatever framework, but man, things changing so much quicker that it's just, you need to dive into this yourself. You need to understand each logic behind the change and sometimes just dive into research. Again, my role here is maybe slightly different because I really trying to understand all of those implications because I'm working across different fields and trying to understand how I can implement this in the medical field, how I can implement it in the fintech field, a bunch of things that not like really direct in terms of those understanding. But the point is you test things and you feel how they affect and you talk to the actual human being that will be a part of the clientele, partnership, wherever. Because my strong belief that you cannot put yourself in different people's shoes so easily in many cases. Like I cannot become a medical professional like really easily and say, hey, I will be using this way. No. It would be kind of like my second guessing that, yeah, doctors will do this. No, man, like they actually do things differently and they have a different type of problems. They worry about different things. So how we can implement the AI to this field in a way that actually will be not scary for them, how it will help them, and why they actually will embrace this idea that, hey, yeah, I love to use this and I love to accelerate my earnings, my productivity with this.
Yeah, totally. That's it. Yeah, that's great. As a great operations and marketing guy, I do like a good framework, so I had to ask that question. So
Yeah, sure. For marketing and operation, sure. I'm talking about strategy, just to
yeah,
be clear.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, if anybody wants to connect with you, follow your journey, how can they reach out, or how can they connect with you? LinkedIn, or what's the best approach?
Yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter is is probably the best approach. You can just Google me, Vadim Peskov, and find me on LinkedIn and message me there. On a company side, Diffco.us or Diffco.com is our address basically, so you can find everything that we're doing there. Yeah, so any startup that interested to put the AI forward and really focusing specifically on enterprise use cases, I'm interested to talk and happy to help as product side on the investment side.
Okay, that's great. Nima, I appreciate you so much for joining the podcast today. I thought it was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. Thanks for donating.
And for everybody listening, be sure to subscribe. Find us on Shopify, Google, Apple Podcasts, things of that nature, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Making Big Shifts. Like, share, and follow for more. Join us next time on Making Big Shifts, presented by Marketing Reboot,